All right, record on this computer. So, welcome everybody. This is April Cox. I am very happy to welcome Daniel Jude Miller for a topic of successful school visits. And Daniel is one of my favorite speakers that has visited us in the author work group. He is an amazing talent and always shares so much great information. You are going to find that the tips and tricks that you learned today are going to carry with you as you start to prepare and get ready to do school visits of your own. And I love that Daniel is so open and willing to share samples of what he's done. Thank you so much, Daniel, for taking time out of your busy schedule and being here to answer questions for us today.
It was a busy schedule. It became a not very busy schedule very fast.
Yeah, so is that you've got some impact to your sessions, do you?
To be honest, I guess I should consider myself kind of lucky. I did over the last 4 weeks, I did 18 visits over 20 school days. And then actually these next 2 or 3 weeks were actually pretty light. I only had like 3 or 4. So then hopefully we can reschedule those. So I kind of lucked out. I kind of got everything in right before everything went bad. And then we'll see what the future holds. But yeah, it's kind of quiet. Right. I was supposed to be working tomorrow. That's not happening. So, but we'll see.
So I do, as you can see here, Daniel, I do have a number of like sample things, and I also have your website open. So I thought I'd give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. We've got a lot of new faces, and we would love to hear a little bit about you, and then we can kind of go through some of the samples you can share, and I'll be watching the chat and bringing questions up as they come as well. Kind of
All
make
right.
this like an ask me anything session. You can share best practices, things that have worked well for you, and we can allow the authors to also ask questions as we go.
Perfect. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm the author of my books. I'm also the illustrator. I'm also the graphic designer. I'm also the publisher. I do my own website. It's sort of one-stop shopping for me. But where I've sold like 90% of my books was through schools. That was sort of the niche that worked for me. Amazon or online sales are not even remotely interesting to me. It just never worked. So I focused all my attention on schools. And like I said, I've done, like in the last month, I did 18 visits all over the place: Long Island, Pennsylvania, New York. I stay within New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, but I've been on the road almost every day for the last 30 days. Going to schools, talking about the books. For me, it works really, really well because not only do I get to sell books there, but I get paid for doing it. And they pay pretty well, like depending on where I am. And the truth is honestly, like, writing and drawing is great, but it gets a little boring. It's a solitary sort of lifestyle, and I really do enjoy getting out. Standing in front of a room. I I've on this run, I think I've talked to groups that were small as 15 kids at a time and as big as 400. It doesn't matter to me either way. It's a different performance depending on the size. There's different things I have to do to make it work and to make it interesting for them. But the truth is, it doesn't faze me. If there's an auditorium full or a classroom, it doesn't really matter.
So
Um,
Leah's asking if you can still prepare YouTube school visit or like Zoom online meetings now that there's issues with in-person visits.
the plan, I wasn't a huge fan of like Skype visits, only because I have like a sort of a philosophy that kids, they spend enough time in front of a screen. So, and also the nature of my presentations, it's very visual as far as slides goes, and as for me physically being there. So I've only done a handful of Skype visits before. Obviously now there's a need to switch over. I can do them. They're not my favorite to do because I just think that it's so much different when the person's in the room. The problem is school's not even in session now anyway. So
Right.
the plan is to sort of next year, since I only travel to 3 states, the plan was to expand my Skype offering so that I could do visits further away without having to actually travel to Ohio. But that for now, it's sort of everybody's just sitting tight and they're hoping to reschedule some of this stuff for June. And luckily for me, like I said, I only missed out on like 3 so far. And I'm going to cross my fingers that everything might get back to normal around mid-May, and then some of the schedule stays intact.
So Stacy's asking, how does your performance at schools vary for a smaller audience versus a larger audience? Or does it vary based on audience age?
Well, it's both actually. So I do, what is it, 5 separate presentations. Okay, so I'll usually do a K, a first and second, a third and fourth, a fifth and sixth. I guess there's 6 of them, and then a sixth and above. Okay, and they're all completely different because obviously an 8th grader, which I don't get to do that often, but an 8th grader is going to be very different than a kindergarten presentation. So each presentation is totally different, but then also it just depending on the size of the room, you have to remember, like, this becomes more than just talking about your books. You have to get used to the performance part of it. So if I'm in a small room, there's a certain type of voice literally that you use because it's a smaller room, as opposed to getting on stage and having 500 kids and having to a lot of times talk over them, because there are certain groups that are a little more chatty than others. When you're talking to kindergarten, you talk a lot slower. You use a very different vocabulary. When you talk, it's funny because I just did an 8th grade the other day. I don't get to do those that often, but you better speak to them different than you would talk to a 1st grader. Otherwise, they're going to tune out in the first 10 seconds. So everything I do is, even so much as how I move around. If I'm in a small group, I'll sit in a chair because it's easier to talk to them and make them feel more comfortable. But you're obviously not going to sit on a chair when it's a 400-person room. So yeah, it varies by size, it varies by grade, it varies a lot depending on who the audience is.
And I love the story that you've shared with me in the past about how you got started with school visits. You didn't naturally just wake up one day and be this dynamic person presenting. So would you mind kind of sharing that story and kind of your development as, with school visits?
Sure. So I was of the mindset, well, just a little background. I went to art school. I was always intended to be an illustrator. I never wanted to be a writer. That was never in the works. I never took a writing class. It wasn't my thing. And then I got a job like I wanted, doing editorial illustration, magazine work, advertisements. And I worked in that field for 15 years. And then during actually the recession, that job went away. And actually a little bit after the recession, 2012, that job went away. And then I was forced to try to figure out what else I was going to do. I had been writing a little bit, for fun, but I never wanted to really, I didn't plan on actually doing it. And then when I didn't have a job, it became sort of a thing to find a way to find work. So I was sort of a reluctant writer. And then I just assumed that you write your book, you print your book, and then you go on Amazon and the money starts rolling in and you're rich. And turned out that wasn't the case. And I ran into an author named Gary Van Riper, who does a series of books called The Adirondack Kids. I ran into him at my first book fair, and he liked my work, and he's up to about 175,000 books, I think he sold. He's a super great guy. If you have any questions, reach out to him. He'll always answer them. But he mentioned author visits, and he said, "Are you going to do those?" And I said, "I don't even know what you're talking about." And he said, "Come with me. You can shadow me and I'll show you how it goes." So I went with him to his last author visit of the year, and it was a room of about 400, I would say, which is, again, it's a little on the high side. The average group is usually around 200, maybe 250. And I watched him do it. He was super comfortable because he had been doing it for 15 years, but I was not. And the last thing I was thinking I wanted to do was this job. There's no chance I wanted to do this. And right at the moment when I heard him say, "I have a friend here, can you come up and answer some questions?" I thought, oh my God, like, what is he doing? And he brought me up, and I just always remember, like, my hand was shaking when he handed me the microphone. And this was like 2nd graders, but I was pretty nervous. Luckily for me, it was June, so I had the whole summer to sort of carve out a program and figure out what I was going to say. And then the truth is, actually, my first visit got canceled because of the snow. It was supposed to be real small, and I was looking forward to it because it would ease me in. The second one, which turned out to be the first one, was giant, and I was doing 500 kids at a time. The weird part is, as soon as I got in front of the room, I was totally calm. And I always recommend to anyone who's nervous about doing author visits, For me, I've always looked at it this way. They're so excited to see you, and there's nothing you can do wrong. Like, the reality is, this is your life and it's your work. They're never going to stump you with a question, so you don't have to overthink it. The reality is they're going to be excited no matter what you do, and it's going to be fun no matter what you do, and just relax and trust that, like, it's going to work fine. And it has. I've done probably 700 separate presentations, and I'd have to think hard to think if any of them were bad. Maybe one was a little rough, but the reality is most kids are great, and it's pretty easy to do this job.
That's wonderful. So I've got a couple questions here. How much time do you allow for the presentations? Kathy would like to know.
Okay, so when I'm doing kindergarten is a half an hour. That's about as much as you can do. Otherwise, it starts getting a little wild. And then all the other ones, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and above, I recommend, I need at least 45, or I try to get 45 minutes. It'd be great if I can do an hour, because that gives me more time to do questions. But I had just worked, 2 weeks ago, I was in the Bronx, and because of the way their schedule works, they couldn't do 45 minutes, so I had to do half hour. So that forced me to kind of condense what I wanted to do. Plus, they wanted to do 8 presentations. So we did 8 half-an-hour presentations. Normally, I'll do 4 with the kindergarten, and then 3 45-minute presentations.
Okay. Leah's asking, have you ever done just a PTO offering or fundraiser? Just curious of other school options, as I really don't have something that would appeal to all different age groups.
I've done well, I've gone to places that only do, you can, I know some authors, if there's work that you have that doesn't appeal to across the board all age groups, that they've only targeted certain grades. Also, that certain school systems are set up as what they call, most school systems are elementary, middle, and high school, but there's a bunch actually that are what they call primary or early learning center, then intermediate, then middle. So if you, let's say, for example, that your books are only for much younger students, there's schools that only have K-2 in that school. There's certain districts, probably a quarter of them only have that in the building. So then you would only target those buildings because you wouldn't have a program for older kids. But the truth is like, if you think, sometimes people think that their books are geared towards younger students. I talk to 8th graders. My books at this point only go to about 4th grade. I have a novel that's supposed to come out in the summer that will go to 7th grade, but I still talk to 7th and 8th grade, and what I do for them is I just talk about the business. I talk about, the idea of becoming a writer. Obviously, the book isn't interesting to them, but I just make that program about the career versus the actual product.
Mm-hmm. So Sarah's saying, can you repeat your friend's name so that we can get that? And I can provide that at the end of
Yes.
the class. And then, do you have different books for different ages, or are all of your books applicable for K-8?
No, they're all different for different ages. So right now I have 2 books that I recommend are from K-2. I have 2 books that are from 3 to 4, maybe 5. And like I said, I have a novel, right? If you look there. So the Monsters in Manhattan series is geared more towards around, I try to say 2nd and above, but believe it or not, since it's about monsters, little kids like it too. It's just the vocabulary is a little big for them. So that series is mostly for like 2 to 5. Then this one, Everybody Wake Up, is from K-2. The one below that is also K-2. This one is not going to come out until Christmas, but that one actually might span from around K-4. And then that's only an online book, so I don't even really use that at schools. And then this is, now it's got a name, but that chapter book will actually span from around 3rd grade to around 7th. So now that's important. At least it's been very important to me, is that, like, since I'm independent, I've staggered the things that I'm writing so I didn't fall into a niche and only be able to speak to younger kids or older kids. I like the idea that I can go into the building. It makes me more valuable as a school visitor, that I can go in there and talk to every grade from K to 8, and it's all different programs. If this is something that any of you want to do as like a real career, I just recommend that you want to think of the product that you're selling, because a PTO, if they're going to spend the money to bring you in, they want to make sure it's providing value for all of the students and not just a portion of the students. So it gets tricky, because there's times you want to vary the subject matter of the books. You want to vary the reading level of the books. You actually want to vary the gender, like meaning like some books I have appeal more to girls and some more to boys, but you don't want to do all girl books, because then it makes it hard for the PTA to justify bringing someone in. If all the books are about princesses, sometimes that's tough for them to sell to the boys in the room. So no, they are pretty varied.
So I'm going to spend a few minutes letting you talk a little bit about your presentation, and we'll go through some of the sample material, which it seems to be where the questions are leading.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about this box here and about your presentation.
Okay, so the funny story about the box is that the box, I got the idea from a TV show about a box that was all chained up, and it's a real box. It's about 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet. It's big. It's got a real chain on it. It's made out of real wood. And I started bringing it to schools. I built it for book shows, and it makes for a good static prop. I thought it would work good at schools, but the problem was you would get a million questions about what was in the box, and the answer was nothing, which had turned out to be a horrible prop, because it would get kids all excited and for no reason. So now there's actually something in the box, and it's a project that I got from a teacher. So the box is there. I start the presentation. I always tell them that we're going to open the box, but we're not going to open it till the end of the presentation, because like any good story, it's important to save the most important part for last. And so that keeps them sort of engaged, that there's this box like on next to me the entire time. At the end, it's the sort of showstopper. Inside the box is a project that's called the Homemade Monster Project. And what it is you go around your house and you find anything you don't need, things that are recyclable, things that are going in the trash, and you take them, and it's like an arts and crafts project, and you build a monster, and then you give him a name and a story. So what's inside there is the one that I've built. He's made out of like one of those styrofoam coolers, so he's pretty sizable, and it has a pretty big impact on the kids, because it's something I lead into in the beginning, that they're going to get to see it. And then at the end, that's sort of right before the question and answers, that's sort of the big reveal. I just point out, like, because the photo of me, I have my outfit's a little different now, because all my shirts are white, but they're all painted. Those are hand painted for me. I think I stress a lot like about what I wear. I don't dress like that normally, but it's important, I think, when you go and you talk to kids like that, you have to engage them on a level that they can understand. So yeah, I have different colored shirts and jackets and shoes depending on what the color of the school is, because that at least forms a bond with them. They love it that I hand paint my own shirts with the characters from my books. And I think it doesn't necessarily mean I'm not a big fan of goofy outfits. Like I don't want to wear a clown wig to a school, but I do think it's important to think, like, remember you're standing in front of an audience for 45 minutes. Sometimes they do get bored with what you're saying. So you want to have a prop on stage. You want to remember what you're wearing can sort of engage them and also further the conversation. And I think sometimes people, they just sort of dress like they're ready. You just need something. I know there's another author, Bobby from the Fairies books, right? I don't think she's here today, but she was here one of the other times that we did
Right.
this. I know she always wears her fairy wings when she does her presentation. It's just enough, like, to engage them just a little bit, because it ties back to the work that you're doing, and it makes them, what it does is it brings their guard down, and it makes them understand that you're here to have fun, and that they're not just like another serious teacher. So I think it is important to watch what you wear to an extent.
What other tips would you have as far as like secrets to success that you've had with your school visits that you can share with other authors here?
I think it's huge for me, right? I had just posted a video on my Facebook. I was supposed to do almost 50 visits this year. We will see how that plays out now, with how many end up getting canceled. But what I was seeing at every school visit, like almost literally unanimous, was that when I would talk to the librarian and they would tell me what a great job that I had done, and I'm not bragging, I take it real serious, and I go there and I try to have fun, and they would say, oh, this was amazing. We've done this for 18 years. this was the best one. And I try to figure out why. And I think it's for a lot of reasons. I think it's the way I do my presentations. I think it's the things I bring posters for the students, all this stuff. But I noticed that the one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of the authors are hard to work with. Like they're just hard to work with. And so I just last week, a librarian said to me, I did my 2 presentations because that's all they wanted. And I said to her, look, I can stay. I have nowhere to go. I got a hotel. I got another event tomorrow. If you want, I'm here. I can go to classrooms. I can go to the lunchroom. We can talk with the kids. I can do a library thing. And she was surprised because she said, oh, our author last year, he did his 2 things and he was like, I got to go. And I think for me in general, and I think this applies to every business, is that the more you offer, the better off you're going to be. And I think because then that helps me because word spreads that I'm literally there from the minute. I'm actually there usually before school starts, but before school starts, and I'm usually leaving when the buses arrive. And I try to give them as much as they can. If they want me to sit and show the kids how to draw, I show them how to draw. If they want me to, eat lunch and just answer questions. But I think one big key is, right, they have to trust you. And I think word will spread quick when they liked your presentations. And then it makes it a lot easier for me to get other work. So just as far as offering as much as you can to these schools as you can. Plus, it's fun. I mean, I usually don't want to leave. Like, I like hanging out with the kids, and I can't tell you how many book ideas that are in production that I got from school visits. So it's in my best interest to stay too.
Yeah. Now you also give kids get something from the visit as well. Can you
Right.
tell a little bit more about, what you give to kids? What do they take home as part of your presentation?
If you scroll down to on yours, the one that says samples there,
Mm-hmm.
or is it number 4? Oh yeah. Okay, so the poster on the left is the red one, is actually what I send to them like a few weeks before I'm arriving. And for me, I think that's good because it gets the kids familiar with what I look like and also like with what's coming. It gets them excited. And it actually makes it more fun for me because when I walk in the building, usually they know who I am and I'm not a stranger, which makes it easier for them to talk to me, but also it's just more fun for me because you feel more like a celebrity. The posters on the right, that's actually it's double-sided. So the posters have the one thing on one side and the other one on the other side. And I bring posters for every kid in the school. And for 2 reasons, and it's actually sort of a sad story, but there's a reason why I do it, is I hope it drives sales and it helps sales so they take something home with them. The truth is I want to sell books too. But I'll never forget, like I did a school at my actual son's school and he had a friend and he told me a week later, he's like, oh, just so you know, he was probably in the 2nd grade. He said, I hung up your poster in my room. And I said, oh, thanks. That's what I expected. And he said, no, you don't understand. He said, it's the only thing I have hanging in my room. I don't have anything else. And that always meant a lot to me because the truth is like only maybe, if I'm lucky, maybe 15% of the kids in the school will actually purchase books. So 85% won't. But the thing is I want to know that of those 85%, that they at least took something home because maybe they couldn't afford the books or whatever. But at least I want to believe that there's a lot of bedrooms that have my posters up, but maybe don't even have my books. So it's an expense. I order posters literally in sets of 18,000 posters. But it's an expense. It costs me around, I would say, depending on the size of school, but it costs me only around $30, maybe $35 per school to do the posters. And I do believe it'll end up selling enough books to cover that cost of those posters. I sell plenty of books, but those posters help drive a couple sales. And again, it just makes me feel good and it makes them excited and they get to go home. And, I watch them all walk away on the bus with a poster. And that's why I do this. I try to do it for myself too. It's supposed to be fun. So.
Nice. Um, so how much do you charge for the visits is some of the questions that we've got. But before we go there, I get a couple of others. Sorry, let me just, Bruce the Spruce is geared for holiday giving, right? That's coming out this Christmas?
It's supposed to be around Thanksgiving. I'm crossing my fingers. The situation's all wacky now too, so I'm not sure how that's going to work. But that's the plan.
Okay, and Stacy's wondering, how do you recommend we prepare or research how to create the content for a school visit? Should we watch others do their author visits, or is there someone where we can go and research what to do for our presentations?
The truth is that my presentation is pretty extensive and I just made it up. honestly. I found very few. Maybe I didn't dig that deep, but I didn't find that many people online, because you know what it is? It's tough. You can't take pictures at schools, it's difficult, and you can't video because, you know, the kids are there and they're not allowed to be in that. So I found that there was very few full author visits online. There's some, but there's not a lot. The truth is I just decided what I would suggest, if you really want to do it, find someone, like you'll find someone local and just ask the same way that I did, if you could shadow them and like get a sense of it. I think that's important. That's what I did. The truth is, though, my program is totally different than Gary's, because he focuses more on storytelling. Because remember, he's only the writer, and so for me, I benefited from being the writer, the illustrator, and the publisher and the designer. So I just sat down and kind of thought about it from this context of I want to sell books, so you have to have a certain amount of stuff in there that's geared towards trying to drive sales. B, I want to actually educate them. Like I want them to leave and I want them to learn about my process of writing. The truth is I don't know if it would be necessary to watch someone else, rather than just think of your process, whatever your process is. How do you come up with ideas? How do you write your stories? If you do the drawings, how do you do the drawings? And just start building it based on your own experience. So if you were like sort of emulating someone else might not really work. Like for me, I went to art school, so there's probably, of the 45-minute presentation, maybe a quarter of it is on my experience on developing as an artist. So if you're not an artist, you wouldn't really be able to take anything from that to sort of, you know, model your own presentation. So I would say find someone to actually physically go and see, and then also just think about your own process and what you want your own kids to experience, you know, what you'd want them to learn, and, you know, and what you think a kid would be interested in.
Mhm. And then somebody's asking, where do you order your posters?
The posters come from all different places. It depends who is the cheapest at the time, because prices change. I think last time it was a company called Next Day Flyers. I've used Print Place. I've used PS Print. I've used U Printing. There's basically anyone can do the posters, but you just got to look around, because there's better deals at different times from different people.
Right. Lisa's saying she's emailed local school librarians and didn't get any replies at all. Who do you contact to schedule an author visit? And, you know, how best do you get the bookings? And I know you do have some samples here I can jump to.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, like, here's the thing. Like, I have a list. I compiled a list of every librarian in New York State, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. So my list has about 5,000 names on it. So what sometimes it's the law. I learned this back when I was in art school. Like when you try to get art work, you have to send out postcards. But the reality is only around 3% of all the people who get something are even going to show any interest, and maybe 1% would book you. So the problem is if you send out emails and there's only emails to maybe, it seems like a lot, but 25 or 30 schools, you haven't yet hit the threshold to possibly get even the first job. It's just the reality of it. So the truth is every year I send out easily 5,000 emails, okay, to all these schools. They get the emails in the spring, at the end of the school year, and then they get them again in the fall when school year starts. I also send postcards to them. That's more expensive. I don't do as many. I'll only do about 2,000 postcards. From that, I'll usually end up with around 40 to 50 visits out of 5,000 emails. And that's some of those jobs are through word of mouth, and because I did the school last year, so they recommend me. But the problem is in order to get the visits, you have to really think a little bit bigger and try to send it to as many people as possible. But the librarians is the correct person. Sometimes I wouldn't recommend sending to the principals, that they don't have the time for it and they're not even in charge of that. You can send out to the PTA or the PTO or whatever they call themselves, because a lot of times they're the ones paying for it and they're in charge of actually scheduling it. And then sometimes there's the reading specialist. If it's not the librarian, it's going to be the reading specialist.
Okay. What size are the posters, Daniel?
They're actually 11 by 17. They're actually big, like, so that, they're impressive.
Mm-hmm. And Leah says she loves that you do discounted books. Are your $10 books paperback?
No, they're hardcover. That's another thing is like since I'm publishing the books, I like think my last print run, the books were only costing me around 225 a book. And in order to sell more books and also get it into more kids' hands, yeah, now it depends on where I am. That's an old flyer. So now if I'm in on Long Island where there's a little bit more money, I've been selling them for $12. And if I'm in more rural areas, I've been still sort of selling them for 10. But the cover price is 16, and I would sell less books and less kids would get them. So yeah, I always do discounted books at schools.
Yeah, and as I look at this sample materials that you have here, now does this 10 reasons why I'm the perfect fit, is that part of what they get ahead of your booking you for a school visit, or is this like something that's on your website?
That was the original postcard. That was the first one I sent when I first got started. Since then,
Mhm.
I sent a lot of different ones, but that information is still on the website. So yeah, so they see that, and all of that stuff is true because again, I try to differentiate myself from the average author because the reality is, like I said, most of the authors out there, the librarians are not really thrilled with what they're getting, both from the how much it's costing them to the engagement with the kids and just hard to work with. I had a librarian tell me last week, she said, oh my God, it was so easy to work with you. She said last year, the lady came and she told us like the morning of that she wanted to have lunch, but she would only drink freshly squozen lemonade. And she used the word squozen, which I thought was funny. And she said, oh, so there I was like on the phone calling all these delis and food places trying to find freshly squozen lemonade. The truth is most of them are just not easy to work with. Like there's sort of a diva complex with most authors. And the truth is I've eaten cafeteria pizza. If that's what they're offering me, then I'm grateful to get it. I've eaten very well too. Some of them have taken me out to eat. But the thing is I try to be as flexible and as interested and as excited as possible because look, it's really an honor to get paid to come and talk to little kids and tell them what I love and then get them to buy books too. So why would it's a job that I'm only at for 6 hours a day and they pays well. I'm fine with that. Like I'm easy to work with.
Right. And I'm just zooming in on this. This is the educator guide. Can you tell me about what kind of things that you do as far as teacher guides or educator guides?
I'll be honest, like I've made all of these. Each book has one of these. These haven't been as effective as I would hope. I think the teachers and the librarians are sort of overwhelmed, like by preparing for an event like mine anyway. So basically, they'll focus usually on only one or two things. Like they'll do one or two of the projects that I have up on usually the simpler ones, and then they'll also do they'll read the books obviously and get the kids sort of on up to speed on what I am. Unfortunately, I wish they used all of this because it took a long time to come up with all these different things. But the truth is, I don't know if they're that engaged to do that much work.
Okay. Let's see. Just looking quickly at the questions we've got here. Let's check out this last list of, hold on, samples here. So this is your order form on the right side. This is a good
Correct.
idea for those authors who are getting, this is what we call, I think, a sell sheet, right?
Correct.
Okay. So it's a great opportunity. Now, I think you've talked about before your process of some authors will send sell sheets out ahead of time, some do it after. Can you share your experience on what's worked best for you?
Sure. I'm probably one of the only people. I like to bring my order forms with me. I don't like to do it in advance because number one, if the kids haven't met me yet, so out of just a show of respect, I like them to meet me first before I try to sell them something. Number two, I think they don't know that they're interested in it because the show is what's really going to sell it. So most other authors, yeah, they send them in advance, but second, they usually just make the school print them out, which I don't think is a good idea either because mine are full color. I like the fact that they're getting what I designed, not just a printout. So I bring them with me. They get the posters and they get the order forms after the visit. And then usually the order form will be dated for approximately a week after the visit for it to be returned. the teachers collect everything, and then I leave them with an envelope. They put everything in the envelope, they mail it to me, I sign everything and send it back. And I think by doing it that way, I sell more books, because if you sell them in advance, there's always going to be some kids who didn't think they were interested, and then they realize they were, but now it's too late because they had to have the order form in by that day. So I think it helps me sell more books. And also, like I said, but the kids are my best sales, people. So I want them to meet me, be excited about it, and then go home talking all day about how great I was, and then want to buy the books. If they had the order forms a week and a half ago, they probably won't do that.
Okay. And I see you have coloring sheets here too. Are those more popular with the smaller crowd?
Yeah, those are on the website too. They can download those, and then I've seen literally walls of those that they'll do. The whole school will color those in. Those work. I just wish that it might be a design issue on how the educator guides are on the website. That's why they're missing it. It's not so much that they wouldn't be interested, is that they're not seeing it. And then on
Okay,
the bottom is all the posts. Those are the current, or at least the last few postcards. That's what has gone out um,
nice.
over the last couple of
It
years.
really, it really shows your personality, the dynamic nature of what they can expect. So I think that's a wonderful thing, is to be your authentic self
Mhm.
and make something really fun that when the school sees it, they realize the kids are really going to enjoy this. And so this, I think it's amazing, that the image that you put out there and these beautiful bright colors. Um, yeah, I love it.
Well, it's also, I mean, I'm sort of I take it for granted at times, but since I have the ability, because as the illustrator, I get it, that it makes it a little easier for me, like, to do a lot of things. Any idea I have, I can create, in a weekend if I have to, and I take advantage of all my skills, like, so to help sell books, that help me get the visits, and I do have an advantage because I know how to do, the website. I built the website myself. If I have a thing I don't like, I can fix it tonight, which is obviously, you know it's very cost effective for me, and it is an advantage on speed.
Yeah. So, and I'm also just hopping over to your website here. For those of you that want to go on and check things out later, it's djude, Jude Miller.com. And there's, information here about the children's books, author visits. He has all of his fees and downloadable information here as well. Um, Daniel, would you mind just kind of giving a sense of how things have progressed with you with regard to your fees? Because I think over time things have changed as you've gotten more experience as well, right?
Yeah, I forget even now. Like, when I started, I was staying in a pretty limited area. Like, I was probably only traveling around an hour and a half out from where I am. So I think I was only charging $500 for the day. Once I realized, in order to get the amount of schools I wanted, that I was going to have to travel further, which is a whole other part of this job. I mean, in the last 2 weeks, I stayed I did 10 visits over 12 days and stayed in 7 different hotels. So it becomes part of the job, traveling around. So then I based the pricing. Once I was traveling further, obviously I was charging more for the ones that I have to travel to. The reality is actually I was right at a point where I was going to start raising the prices again, because there's something interesting that happens in this business too, is that if it's too cheap, then they assume it's not good. Because the average author visit person is potentially charging $2,000 for the day, which is absurd. I think. But I think by next September, depending on how the world is at that point, it'll probably go over, instead of 6, 8, and 1,000, it'll probably going to be closer to 750, 950, and 1,200. Because I think that the schools, that 1,200 would give them the confidence that I must know what I'm doing if I'm willing to charge that. Because sometimes, that's the tricky part with free visits. Like, in the beginning, obviously I still do a handful of free ones. The people that reach out to me and the school just doesn't have the budget for it, I still will do it, because I do really believe in what I'm doing, and also I can still sell books there. When you're starting, yeah, you're probably gonna have to do it for free to get used to, for your own sake, to get used to what you're doing, but also start to build a network of people that can recommend you and things like that. So don't be ashamed of free ones. The reality is it can't be a business model though, because ultimately you won't sell enough books to make this worthwhile. So it's definitely a place to start, but you don't want to sort of make that the plan that you want to do 50 free things a year, because it won't work.
Right. Have you always had flat fee charge, or have you ever done a prepaid amount of books in lieu of a flat fee?
I've done that. The truth is though, is like the average school is around 400 kids. So like if it's a really small school, they might do that. I've had a handful of schools that bought like 200 books, and then I don't charge for the visit because they're buying so many books. And I'm actually making more money just because they bought so many books. The reality though is it's hard for most schools to do that. 90% of them, they just have too many kids. And if they had to buy that many books, it would be $5,000 for the visit, and they would never be able to afford it.
Right. Okay. Leah says, I love the idea of creating a monster out of trash. Do you have something about that on your book link? Would be happy to share it.
If you go to the activities page there at the top, it's the top project there, that one right there. So you scroll down, that's the homemade monster project. If you watch the video, you'll see what's actually in the box. And then there's the sheet there that has like the instructions that you can download.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's why it's the first project on the list of projects, because it's the one that definitely gets the most attention.
Okay. And you've got others. So
Mhm.
these are ideas for teachers prior to or after your visit, right? To kind of supplement what you're doing.
Right. Right. So and I mean that the one with the feet I've seen a million of these drawings. I drew the feet on there, and then it's their job to sort of finish the monster. It's an easy thing for them, for the school to download and print out. They've done it before. Some of the other things, yeah, they're more for after they've met me. The videos, certain things I don't get a chance to talk about because there's just not enough time. But yeah, I try to give them as much content as possible, so that, again, remember, I want to sell books and I want to get paid, but I also want to have actual value to them as educators, and also keep the kids engaged.
Nice. I love this one too, The Monsters in My School. I was looking at that earlier today.
Yeah, that one, again, since the Monsters in Manhattan book is about someone going around New York City and finding different monsters at different tourist attractions, it was sort of an easy stretch to have them just write the same book, but only about their specific school. Like what would live in the nurse's office, what would live in the cafeteria. And I've actually gotten a handful that they've made, like they've actually done the book. Each kid did a different monster, and then they've actually bound it and given it to me as an actual book. It's pretty cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Nice. Yep. And I see the teacher and parent guides. That's great to have these resources that are downloadable right from your website. Perfect. So I'm going to stop sharing unless, is there anything else on your website that you want to direct us to?
There's nothing on the website. I'm actually starting tomorrow, because now that I have all this time off, I'm starting tomorrow. There'll be a Patreon channel now,
Mhm.
so that, like, I'm going to be posting videos, and it'll be easy to find. It's on Patreon under Daniel Jude Miller, and I'm going to be posting videos on funny stories, because there's tons of funny stories that I have of just talking to kids. There's going to be obviously tips and techniques on the differences between talking to older kids or younger kids, and then there's also going to be a section on how I get the visits. And so it should be pretty interesting, because I have a list of literally at this point over 100 videos. So the page is there, but there's only like one video so far, but that's going to start over the next couple days. So that'll be an interesting resource for people, even if they just like hearing the stories. It's always funny to hear what kids say to me and what I experience when I'm out there.
Nice. Love it. So we have any other questions here? Do you ask the school to provide equipment like a microphone, projector?
In one of the videos I'm going to do on the Patreon channel, I'm going to go into detail on that, because the equipment is really specific and important. So I bring my own laptop, because I don't rely on their equipment, because it's not reliable. But the only thing I ask them for is the projector, because you don't want to be lugging your own projector around. And the microphone, to be honest, I only use microphone probably a quarter of the time, because I just rely on my own voice. I'm pretty good at projecting. So I bring my own laptop, I plug into their projector, and I'm going to show, like in the video, like there's a lot of little things that I've learned over the years, specific cables you want to bring, because I've run into every sort of problem imaginable. And the last thing I need, my presentation is very slide heavy. Each presentation has about 100 slides in it. If I don't have that, I've done it once without the projector, and I can do it, but it's not recommended. So I have a whole list of cables and batteries and things I bring that most of the time I don't use, but the reality is it's best to have them because you never know what you're going to find.
Mm-hmm. A lot of lessons learned along the way, I'm sure.
Yeah, hard lessons. Like a simple example is one time I had to do the whole presentation and the slides were basically black and they couldn't figure out why their projector was working. And it just turned out that the cable that was connecting it to my computer had a cut in it. And they figured it out halfway through the day. Now I bring that cable just in case. Then if I notice if it looks weird, I'll switch their cable out and use my own. It's just worth it because it saves me a giant headache.
Yeah. Now, Lisa's wondering, do you read the actual book? Do you do a book reading, or is it on slides? Are you covering topics around the book? How does that work, Daniel?
It depends on the grade. Like I said, my presentation is all on a screen, like either a giant screen behind me, or B, these smart boards or these Promethean boards that they have at the school. So the only grade level that I actually read a book to, but I'm not using the actual book because it's on the screen, is the kindergarten. That they get the entire book because it's just best for them to have it read by me, and then they don't understand a lot of the other content I would do for older grades anyway. I don't read from the actual book because it's just too small. It's just, most times I'm doing a room of 200 kids. There's no way I would be able to show the book. So it's important to me that it's big and it's on the screen. Everybody after first grade, there's basically my program is set up as a quarter of it is about my early career and even me in my childhood of becoming an artist, because they like to see childhood drawings. They like to see where I was at when I was their age. So a quarter of it is about that. A quarter of it is about writing techniques and where I get ideas from and things like that. A quarter of it might be reading, and then a quarter of it is just some other topics like I want to focus on, like motivational topics, like never giving up on things and why I didn't give up on things. So basically it's broken into sort of sections or chapters, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And the videos, you talked about your Patreon site. I just want to make sure that's right. So it's patreon.com/Daniel Jude Miller.
I don't think it comes up as Daniel Jude Miller. I think you have to go to Patreon and then just search for Daniel Jude Miller because it wasn't working for me the other way today. And like I said, right now there's only one video, but I was editing all videos today, and starting tomorrow, they're going to start being videos, 3 or 4 videos a week that cover a whole range of topics.
Nice. All right. Do we have any other questions for Daniel? I know we're kind of approaching the top of the hour, but I think we have 5 or 10 minutes more if anyone has other questions. Most memorable school visit?
Most memorable school visit. Well, okay, so they're all memorable, and they're all memorable for different reasons. That's why on the Patreon channel, I just have a section of just stories of things that were funny that happened and you would have never imagined could happen. But if I had to I've never had a bad one, but if I had to say some of them that were memorable is I've gotten to do my own son's school. I've actually done it twice. He's in the 6th grade now, but I did it when he was in the 2nd grade and then again now when he's in the 6th grade. That one's memorable because I live in this town, so it's always funny because most of the kids know what I do because they know my son, but a handful don't. And it's funny for them, their reaction to know that they saw me in Lowe's and now I'm the guy in front on stage. Also, I was lucky enough to get to do my own elementary school. I went to Catholic school. They don't really, that's another thing. Catholic schools don't do this very often because they usually don't have the money for it, but I'll do a handful here and there. I actually did my own elementary school, and that was pretty wild to be on the stage where I've seen other people. I went from K to 8 in the same school, and it was pretty crazy to go back there, whatever it is, 25 years later, and stand on that stage and talk to those kids. Sadly, they closed literally the month after I was there. After 100 years, they didn't have enough students, so they merged with another school. But I'm very lucky and very grateful that I was able to get that visit in before they went away.
That's amazing. Daniel, is there going to be a charge to watch your videos on Patreon? I assume that you will have different levels, right?
Yeah, there's different levels. I think the middle level, which for just basically seeing almost everything, is only $4 a month. And the truth is the plan is that there'll be a video every other day. On some of them will be on marketing, some of them will be on the actual techniques of how I do the presentations, and then some of them will be on just stories of what you can expect and the funny things that happen. So I'm hoping, for $4 a month, there'll be about 12 videos. And I have a list already of all my subjects that I have over 125 different videos planned. So there should be tons of content, and it shouldn't be very expensive at all.
I'll definitely be one of the first ones to
Thank
subscribe
you.
there. That sounds amazing.
Thank you.
All right. So do we have any authors out there who are getting ready to do a school visit or planning ahead that want to talk a little bit about what they're planning and maybe ask for some advice specifically from Daniel? We might be in the early stages with
It's now is going to be a very strange time, like, because everything, my guess is so far, everything that I have for the next 2.5 weeks is obviously already canceled. After that, I have a bunch. It's a little too soon to know, like, whether that stuff will get canceled or not. So even if you were planning, I would plan for September anyway and take the time to think it out, because I just think school's going to be sort of a mess for the rest of the year. So I won't even be pushing that hard to try to market until probably the summer, when I'll start again. And once hopefully everything's sort of normal, and then that's when I would do it. So it's a little early if you're planning on. You have plenty of time to get ready for the next school year.
So now's a good time to start compiling the list of schools, and
Right.
then you typically send out your first postcards or emails in the summer.
Yeah, usually, because in Pennsylvania, I know every state's different. In Pennsylvania, their school starts at the end of August. New York and New Jersey start beginning of September. So usually I wait till about 2 weeks after school starts, because they don't want to think about it the first week. So whenever your schools are starting, give it a couple weeks, and that's usually when I start getting in touch. And it's easy as far as building the list. Building the list is easy. It's a lot of work. It's labor intensive, but it was just a matter of you can look on Wikipedia actually for whatever state and the school districts, and then you get an entire list. And then one by one, I just went to their websites, and every school just copy and pasted their address and the librarian's name. It took me to do those 3 states, took a solid month over a summer, but now I have the list. It's got to get updated every year because people leave and stuff like that. But generally, about 90% of it is the same year to year. So that's a good thing to do over the summer. You can take your time and start working on that.
Right, that's a great idea. In normal years, do you take summertime to strategize, or are you doing other visits like libraries and bookstores?
I don't do bookstores. To me, bookstores are sort of a waste of time, because it's very hard for them to market that stuff. So I would go, and there would be 10 people there, and I would sell 9 books, and it was just too much work for what I was getting out of it. Libraries, they do a better job, so I'll do a handful over the summer. But for the most part, the summer is my time to catch up on writing and drawing, because I can do a certain amount of it during the year, but a solid 3 months off gives me time to actually start to bulk up the amount of product that I'm going to have for September.
Great. Daniel, if anyone had other questions and wanted to reach out or contact you, what would be the best place to reach you? Is it by email or through your Patreon site?
You can email me directly. I have pretty much everything. The letter D, Jude Miller at Yahoo, at gmail.com, on Facebook, on Twitter. I have the same thing. They're all the same. The only one that's different, the Patreon, I couldn't do that for some reason. So it's actually my full name, Daniel Jude Miller. But you can contact me through any of them and be happy to help. Someone helped me, And if I can help someone else, this has been a rewarding business for me, and it's been very lucrative. So if I can help someone else get started, I'd be perfectly happy to do that.
Are you willing to share, when you say lucrative, what if the from the beginning where you started to now, what's kind of the range that you have made doing school visits and really, selling books as a result of those school visits?
When I started, like this is now my fourth year, and I've had a really weird path. The first year I did pretty well, and I think I did 24 visits. It cost a bunch of money for me to get up and running as far as buying some stuff I needed and everything. So to be honest, I don't think I even turned a profit that first year. The second year, I still don't know why this happened, but I ended up only doing 8. And I was doing all this marketing, but for some reason it just didn't work, and I still don't know the answer. Then last year I did 35, but because I had I had some printing issues, I had some business problems, and when I did my taxes, I think I made $30 last year, even though I'd done 35 visits. But this year, once I'd gotten some of the business parts straightened out, I was scheduled to do 45 visits, and I probably would have the revenue on it would have been probably around $70,000 on it between the book sales and what I was getting paid. And it's probably about 50-50. So half of that revenue would have been the actual fees to have me come, and the other half would have been from actual book sales. Because generally, and that's another reason why I stagger the ages of my books, is because it gives me the most people to sell to. So I'll generally sell to around 20% of whatever the population is. So if there's 100 kids, I'll sell 20 books. If there's 500 kids, I'll sell 100 books. And so overall, over the whole school year, in a normal year, I was shooting for 50 visits actually this year. An average school has 400 kids. That would have been 20,000 kids. And that would have meant that I would have sold around between 4,000 to 5,000 books at schools. I only sell about 1,000 in other places, like through the website and through stores. I have very limited exposure to that. But I was shooting for around 5,000 books. Obviously, that's all up in the air now, but that's where the numbers were supposed to be.
Okay. Leah's asking if you're on Instagram as well.
I am, but I don't think, believe it or not, there's any posts on that. That's one of the hard parts for me. I do so many different things. Social media stuff is really tough because I just don't have the time to do it. So I'm not great with that. I have an okay Facebook page, and I have an amazing website and a terrible social media presence.
Yeah. All right. Any final questions for Daniel? As always, Daniel, it's a pleasure to have you. And this time, my computer will not
Good.
crash and burn. Just for others that weren't here at the beginning, when last time Daniel spoke to our work group, my computer crashed and I did not have a recording. So anybody that wasn't here personally didn't get to replay the meeting. So I was heartbroken. So we made sure that today that won't happen. So thank you again, Daniel, for your time. This has been an amazing meeting and a lot of information for our new authors to get them started thinking about their school visits.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Great. Awesome. So you're welcome to drop. I'm going to hang out with anybody that needs one-on-one help, as I usually do, stick around for about a half an hour after the meeting. Just to be here to help anyone who needs help. Daniel, I can disconnect you, or you can feel free to drop if you need to.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go eat dinner. I'm
Okay.
starving.
Thanks again.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. All right. So,
It was very informative.
yeah, what do you guys think?
That was very informative.
Yeah, lots and lots of things to think about, right?